This week we are going to be talking about the principles of design, the next chapter in the book. And you might notice right off the bat that I don't have quite as many as they do. In the book, they added rhythm and repetition, and I include that under unity and variety. So the only ones that you have to know for me are unity and variety, emphasis and focal point, balance, proportion, and scale. Now, last week we talked about the visual elements, things like line and shape and space and color and texture. And those are the components of art. So those are the things that you would use to create a work of art. You know, I use shapes, I use lines, I use colors. But the principles of design are the guidelines that we use to create a work of art. So how do I organize shapes on a page? Well, we use principles of design to help us do that. You know, how do I use lines? How do I use colors? The principles of design are good guidelines for helping us do that. Oftentimes, I like to think of it this way. To me, this is the easiest way. Say you're going to bake chocolate chip cookies. You get out the ingredients or the stuff you're going to use to make them, right? So you got the flour, the baking soda, the butter, the sugar, whatever. And those would be like the visual elements. Those are the things that you use. Then over on the other side here under the instructions, it tells you how to put those things together in order to come up with these delicious chocolate chip cookies. So the instructions are like the principles of design. They are the things that tell you that you need to get the oven ready and how to mix it up so it'll work the best and things like that. Now, do you have to do it exactly the way they say? Probably not, right? You probably don't. But what you'll find is this is pretty tried and true. This is the old Nestle's recipe, and for those Toll House cookies, and they have done it and got this down perfected, and it works really well. So as artists, I always say to my students, know what the principles of design are, know why they work, and then when you know those things, if you want to alter them or play with them or mess with them, go ahead. But know why you're doing what you're doing. That's the most important thing. So the first one we're going to talk about today is unity and variety. How do you get things to look like they do belong together and yet not incredibly boring, right? I need unity to pull everything together, and yet a little bit of variety might be nice. Unity is the sense of oneness, right? Where everything looks like it belongs together. It makes sense. You look at it and you go, okay. Variety are the elements which provide some interest and keep it from being way too boring. When you look at a work of art, if things look like they belong there, if you look at a work of art and say, I can't even imagine this working without these things, that is unity. If you look at something and it sticks out like a sore thumb, not only is that variety, it's probably too much variety. So let's look at some ways that you can create unity in a work of art. The first way or device that you could use to create unity is by proximity. Now, please note these because, like, you know me, I'm always changing from the book. I'm always doing things a little bit differently. But unity by proximity means bringing things together spatially, how close things are together. And so let me give you a couple examples here. If somebody brought this in, I would look at it and I'd go, I don't know, you just kind of got two different things. I don't see any relationship there. But the closer we get them together, the more they begin to look like they go together. And if they touch, then they really begin to look like they go together. They almost form one shape, and better yet, overlap. So I always tell my students, touch, awesome, overlap, even better, okay? If you look at this one, they look like they belong together. They overlap, they interconnect, they intertwine together, and you get that sense that they have this super strong relationship. It creates a unity in the work. In this particular work, we've got some spaces in between, but two of the figures, these two right here, seem to have a connection. There's a little touch, a bit of an overlap with the two of them, and it brings them together, pulls this work together actually, and it creates a unity in the work. Now, unity by repetition. This is where I said I pulled repetition into unity. So, but we can talk about bringing things together by repeating elements or continuing elements. So let me give you an example of that. So you will walk in, had you go do a collage or something, and you came back with this, and I said, I don't know, it's kind of all over the map. I don't see anything that pulls these together. What do you think? We got, basically all different colors, all different shapes. There's a lot of just random space around here. I don't know. Okay. So you do some adjustment, you come back and you say, look, I made them more, added more of the same color. And I'll go, oh, that's awesome. So now what you've done is you continued a color in the work. So when I went from here to here, notice what your eyes did. All of a sudden, it's like it made more sense. And then you were so smart, you left that pink one and you made it just a little bit taller, so it created a little bit of interest in the picture, and it actually is the focal point of the picture. So I go, that's a lot better. I really like that. Now, you could also think, instead of just changing the color, I could have changed the shape. And so by organizing the shape, and even better yet, aligning them, right? So they're all aligned in a row, same height, so forth, on the same baseline, you go, oh yeah, that is super structured. So even though they're different colors, they're organized. Now, better yet, I would say same color, same structure, whoa, right? Super unified, super organized, but super boring. What can you do for me? Well, I can change color, right? So when you think about it, we can organize these into different shapes. Now, with this one said, right? If you look, this is the original picture, the original collage, and over here I just took it and randomly put patterns inside of the different shapes. Now, if you just look at this one, you may not have even known what that was. It is too much chaos. That's what I'm talking about. Too much variety is chaos. Too much unity is boredom. You've got to have you got to strike that right balance between the two of them. In this work, you can see this is Matisse, and he has a lot going on in this piece. There's a lot of just random bits and pieces around it, but because he continued the red throughout this work, kind of pulls it together. I'll be honest, I still think there's a lot going on, but thank goodness for that continuation of red in this. Architecture has a lot of repetition in it. If you look, we got, the repetition of the columns, the repetition of the squares, the coffered squares up in the ceiling, repetition just even in the pews and the floors. But a lot of architecture, and especially traditional architecture, is just based on repetition. You draw a line in half and it's the same thing on either side of it. We could also think about repetition being maybe loosely the same shape, right? So basically you look at these and go, yeah, they're loosely just circles over and over again. So that still ties it together, but also the fact that they're cakes also ties it together. And we'll talk about that in just a minute, which is content. I could repeat an element throughout a work and give the figures something in common. So in this one, because that fence runs behind the two girls, it pulls them together. It gives them something that they're both are part of. There's also a little touch overlap, which is awesome, right? Right here with the dresses. Patterns are when you take a motif and you organize it and repeat it in a sequential order, right? That we look at it and we expect that to happen again. So in this particular pattern, somebody created this little heart and then they just repeated it, and they've spaced it in such a way that you expect it to happen again and again and again and again. That's a pattern. We use patterns all the time. And you can see these are organized there's a lot of pattern palettes out there that people use. And here you go. It used to be back in the olden days when I was growing up, they always said don't mix patterns. Now we do it all the time. But even when you do, you still have to be careful. You're probably going to be looking at pulling maybe some same colors through them, or just make sure that the patterns complement each other. So, unity by style and technique. What does that mean? This would be a different way, right? We looked at proximity, we looked at repetition and continuation. Now, style and technique. So sometimes artists have a certain style in their own artwork that pulls it together. We can look at a Seurat who did all the little tiny dots. We've looked at him before. But because his work are all done in little tiny dots, it looks like it goes together. It looks like it all belongs together. And if you look at this close up back here, you can see all those little dots, and it looks very organized and very much the same. There's another Seurat work. So he used that over and over, and that was his thing to unify a work of art. Now, there are certain medias that you could do it. So a style is one thing, but I could also do it by just using a certain technique or media of art. And you are looking just at a little chunk, a little piece of old mosaic. Mosaic is when you cut up tiles or pieces of glass into little shapes, and then you organize them by pressing them down into some sort of adhesive or cement or something. Whenever you watch HGTV and they're grouting a bathroom, this is exactly what they're doing, right? And so then you push them all in, and then you grout over the top of them to fill in all those little holes in between. Nobody was better at this than the Romans. And in ancient Rome, this was a huge business. They had huge workshops where they would do these, and they would lay out a canvas with the holes in it. Like, you know what I'm talking about. You go to Lowe's and you buy these sheets with the tiles on them, and then you put up adhesive, you push that in, and then you grout in between them all. So they're already kind of preset into that organized pattern that we're talking about. So they would do that. They would put these all onto one of those big mesh canvases, roll it up, and then send it somewhere out into the Roman Empire, wherever they wanted to go. Somebody's probably, like Herod's palace somewhere or something like that. And then they would lay it down on the floor or the wall or whatever it was they wanted to mosaic, and then they would grout it. Now, look, I want to give you an example. This is up close. And this is what I'm talking about. Just because the art, now this is a piece that's gone, so ignore that. But like if you look at these, you'll say, just because of the overall way that the tiles are put down, it looks like it's organized, like it belongs all together. It creates a unity within it. Now, prepare yourself, because you are just looking at a close up. Let me show you the whole thing. And I want you to remember, these are tiles, right? These are tiles that they cut up and put in place, and then they organize the colors so that they would create shadows. Watch this. When you back away and look at this, this is what it looks like. I mean, holy cow, really, right? That's amazing. That's truly amazing. The Romans were great at this. They would even do portraits in this, cutting up these little tiles and placing them and grouting them. Crazy good. Some artists have a certain style within their art that it might be the subject. So if you look at this particular work, Di Chirico's work, an Italian futurist artist, when he has this kind of strange, like otherworldly quality about his work with these odd figures and these super isolated environments that they're in. If we added something to this, and this is what I mean, when you add something to it and it sticks out like a sore thumb, you have broken the unity, and it's probably even too much variety. So let me give you an example of that. Let's add a Rococo Marie Antoinette figure. You look at this and go, it has nothing to do with anything else. Completely has broken it. So do you see what I mean? We could do it by style and technique. It could be the artist's style, maybe how he goes about painting it. It could be the artist's style and subject matter, or it could be the materials that he's using. This particular work by Jackson Pollock, right? When he does all the big drip stuff, we've looked at his stuff before, and he's got all this drip work that happens on it. If we tried to do something different to this, you go, totally doesn't work. I don't know what she's doing in there. It's a totally different style. Doesn't work at all. So let's talk about concept. Unity by concept would be ideas that you would look at and organize together. So you look at something and go, oh, yeah, I can look at that. I can see, yeah, that makes sense, right? Just because you've lived and you know that certain things make sense together, you look at it in a work of art, and that's enough for you. So it's a psychological unity, right? So if you look at this particular still life, you look at all the parts and the elements in it and you go, oh yeah, that makes sense, right? There's a big bowl of soup, it's hot, right? And we're going to have that, and the bread has a towel still around it, so probably still warm, and there's some wine back there. This all makes sense. You go, yeah, dinner, that makes sense. That creates unity within that work. But let's say you're standing there for a minute and you're really looking at it, and then all of a sudden you realize, is that Batman? Right? Now, all of a sudden, it doesn't make sense. It made sense a minute ago, but now all of a sudden that you see Batman, you go, I don't know. I don't know what Batman has to do with anything, right? Okay, that is a disruption. It broke the unity because that makes no sense. Okay, so just in our minds, the way we organize our thoughts, the things that belong together, if we throw a wrench in that, it breaks the unity of the work. This particular work is by, uh, oh, name left me. I think it's Audra Flack. And she created this work, and it's, as you look at it, you can kind of say, okay, I think maybe there's something here. And I can probably tell you just a little bit more, but I still think there's more that I don't know. But this would be like a shrine, or, objects that you brought together to kind of make a memorial to somebody. This is a very young Marilyn Monroe. And this is when she was a child with her brother. If you look at this clock, that is the time that they found her in her apartment early in the morning. You look up here and the shadow falls on the date that she died. Of course, we already know that the hourglass means time is running out. And I've got a feeling some of these other things, if the artist was here, she would tell us, yeah, I put that in there. I lit the candle for this reason or that. But those are all things that sometimes as we look at it, it might take a few minutes, but if we take a little time, it begins to make more sense too. All right, so those are unity by content. So that is unity and variety. And let me know if you have any questions. And I want you to go on and do a couple assignments in Unity now.